Welcome back to the program. A recent report indicates that Barclays PLC and Citigroup have approached South African competition regulator with information relating to the alleged rigging of the rand currency's exchange rate. South Africa's Competition Commission says on Wednesday it had found more than a dozen local and foreign banks colluding to coordinate trading in the South African and U.S. currencies. Its inquiry centered on an instant messaging chat room called ZAR Domination, which the Commission alleged was used by the banks to coordinate trading activities when giving quotes to customers who buy or sell currencies. Barclays reiterated on Friday a statement made earlier in the week in which it says it was cooperating with regulators, while Citigroup, which had also said it is working with the regulators, was not immediately available for comment. Barclays and Citigroup were not included in the list of banks that the Commission recommended should be fined, but did not name members, but did name them as members of the alleged rigging group. So let's get a bit of more perspective into that as Channel Television South Africa's Bureau Chief Betty Dibia speaks with the Chief Economist of the National African Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Landwe Matlango.
These banks, most of whom actually are involved in the foreign exchange market, it seems like they were colluding. In other words, is that rather than actually determining the price, or for instance, buying or selling rand as determined by the market price, but they were actually colluding to make a price in such a way that, for instance, the dollar becomes much more higher as compared to a rand, because it involved over 16, at least we're told, banks. It means it's something that has been widespread, and it looks like something that has been quite fairly organized.
We've been there before. In 2001, when Mr. Kevin Wakefield wrote the then president, Thabo Mbeki, regarding this. And then you still had people who were saying this is a case of patriotism versus business, and profitable business as well. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I don't see it as very different. I think you remember that in the case that you're referring to, where literally there was a very clear attack on the rand to almost a point of it collapsing. We think that a large part of this behavior and conduct is driven by, in my view, what I'll call this perverse incentive to seek super profit. But because it actually attacks the currency of the country, it's also seemed to have all connotation of being really, in my view, not very patriotic. If you look at the whole 16 banks that are actually kind of involved, you would see that, foreign banks, and most of them are actually, our banks here happens to be also, in the main, at least in significant ways, also foreign controlled, So yes, I'm not connecting the dots that don't connect, but we think that the issue of foreign ownership and the lack of significant indigenous ownership is partly, responsible for this kind of practices.
Let's look at the Reserve Bank. The statement from the Reserve Bank the wording was quite cautious. I don't know whether it has to do with the last time when then Reserve Bank Governor Tito Mboweni said they will enforce existing laws already, and the impact that it had on the market, on the currency as well, where it had a negative impact. Do you think, or how do you think the Reserve Bank can do this?
The Reserve Bank, clearly, remember that the constitutional obligation of the Reserve Bank is basically to ensure that they protect the currency of the country. That is their constitutional obligation. And I think you must view the statement of the Reserve Bank in that light. And the instrument before the Reserve Bank are basically to ensure that as they protect the currency of the country, they have to use monetary policy instruments, to do so. So they're not really in the realm of actually, if you like, enforcement, as it were. And that is why we also welcome the statement when they said, if that practice it's as widespread as it does, and the people who have been found to be guilty of it, stiff penalties must be done. That's what the Reserve Bank have actually said, which I think they're quite correct, and we support them in that respect.
Stiff penalties, what do you see?
Well, you know, obviously they range from actually ensuring, you know, that important, in other words, you know, they dock quite a significant percentage of the profits and the earnings of these banks.
It's about 10%, isn't it?
It's about 10%. We think this time around, particularly because, remember, the stiff penalty were made basically for cases, I would imagine. I don't think it was foreseen that you'd have such a wide-scale collusion. We think that probably they need to be much, much more severe, because the whole idea is deterrent. You know, the costs, you know, one of the problems of this practice, you know what it has done is that the rand, as you may know, has become one of the most volatile currencies. What then happens is that, particularly foreign direct investment, they basically postpone, their investment because of that. That actually, down along the line, means that investment that would have happened is being postponed, so growth is being sacrificed, so jobs that we saw needs don't actually happen. So, to me, that is actually, the price of manipulation. Not to mention the issue of reputation. So, the cost of this is quite very important. That's why when this case is actually investigated and decision is being made, those are the considerations that they must be taken into consideration. And the penalties must not simply look at what has happened, how to do regulation, is the impact of that has had in the economy, such that there must be a very clear deterrent that such practices mustn't happen. Some people have actually been called for extreme things like the revoking of the banking licenses. I would say that it was still within the realm in terms of the punishment, in terms of punishment and sanctions.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of sanctions, every week the country may still suffer, or the currency may still suffer.
We know that, but the country, it's just that we can't quantify, has always suffered, and it was likely that it was going to suffer. The scale of which this was actually done, if it's proven to be true.
The chief economist at the National African Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry in South Africa, Landwe Mtalango. Thank you for watching, everyone. Bye for now.